All right. Well, John, I'm super excited to actually talk to you today because I think I've been thinking more about some things you've been sharing with me and really looking at journey flows and the experiences. And sometimes we can get so caught up in our own little world of, I'm come from the software space, and I really want to hear more about what you do in your background. So why don't we start there, and then we'll kind of jump into talking about how we set up a good journey flow and the experiences that we want our customers have, and how we're not that far off from what we do in service, software. It's an experience management that we're both trying to do kind of the same thing. So thanks for making time. But yeah, why don't you do a little introduction and talk about what you do, because it is so different than what I've experienced in my career.
I mean, it's different and it's the same, Lee. So thanks first for having me. And second, here, remember, we're all human, right? We all make decisions based on emotions, connections, branding. We all make decisions based on those things, and we all create memories based on those things. So what I do is events, film productions, PR stunts. What I do is things to heighten a brand's awareness and go face to face. It's really face to face with consumers. I do some film work, but it's more event and the strategy of when you're face to face with them, and how I compare that. What's interesting in talking to you is, I mean, when people are invited, there's a certain expectation set up. When you release a product or however you communicate this awareness, there's an awareness there. So you're capturing. You want them to come in and take a look, right? Well, in our case, we're inviting them to an event, and we don't want them. Here's the downside: is if it's a pharma meeting, if it's a sales share meeting, if it's something that happens every year, there's an expectation there that we have to beat right away because they have a memory. So if it's a repeated experience, our first thing is to reset the bar, to make sure we invite them, to make sure we say something compelling and mysterious to make them look forward to it and even anticipate it, instead of drudging going through this thing,
Yeah.
So and then
with that, like thinking about the journey of your customer, because it's I think what I'm understanding about event prepare. When I get invited to an event, you're right. I'm going to go, well, if I've been there last year, whether it's a banquet and I know they're going to ask me for money, but it should be fun because the band's going to be cool, and how you get what the theme is and those types of things. But then, thinking about the customer journey and how you look at, because I'm kind of trying to mirror it to, as I'm trying to acquire a new customer for a software company, and, you're pushing out content and you're trying to link to them with the problem that they're having, and that you might have a solution, and then you have those first touch. So tell me about how you kind of go about, like, say, planning an event. I mean, if people are going to come to you and go, hey, John, we're going to launch this new whatever movie, and we want to have a pre-party, and we want you to how would you go about kind of organizing that for a client?
Well, I mean, the natural, if you were to use, and I hate this phrase, party planner, would be, venue, food, blah, 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 blah. To me, that's blocking and tackling.
Yeah.
You're going to do that. It's an event. The real question comes in is, how do we want them to feel? What are we trying to assuage, and what action are we trying to get from them? So I'm an emotionalist. I'm a behaviorist who has a great skill set in bringing things together, but it's behavior that I'm most interested in. And what are these people expecting, and what do we want them to leave with, and what are all the touch points we can achieve that with? So that's the psychology thing that I love that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that approach, because you're really coming at it as, and I think you said this earlier, and I always say this with my teams and too, at the end of the day, we're just people helping people, right? So don't get caught up in all too much of the process. I mean, those are, like you said, those are the block and tackle, and we got to make sure that everything's in order for that great experience. But you got to remember that you're dealing with people. And so what are some of the things that you make sure your teams and the people you work with are focused on, to keep them focused on just that, rather than just, we're just going to do the process and everything will be fine?
Yeah, it usually starts with if you can have an honest conversation with who's throwing the event, getting in the reason, and finding out what hasn't worked in the past. The best question is, what keeps happening at your events that bothers you? Yeah. And they're there. They have these things like, you're inviting 1,500 people to an event with a headline artist. How do you get them all in fast? How do you make them feel welcome? How do you, because we've all gone to an event where we think we're a VIP and then we stand outside for 30 minutes and you don't know which line to get in. And you want to talk about taking great anticipation and destroying it. Put somebody in 3 different lines that nobody knows what they're doing outside a venue and see how bad the review is when that person does get inside because of the experience they had trying to get in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so funny. Like just thinking about what you're saying and thinking about, oh man, I've had that experience. Like, showed up, I didn't know where to go. There wasn't good signage. You're like, what are you trying to figure out? So it sounds like, and which is great. I mean, you take a lot of feedback. So what are some of the feedback things that you do maybe before, or I guess after an event, to make sure that you can go back and show the value of how do you define success for your client? So when an event's done, you can kind of go back and go, well, here's how we achieved that outcome. I guess you'd be defining that early in the process, like what's success look like, but then how do you follow up with it with your client to get confirmed that you added that value for them?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, it depends on the challenge, right? One of the things, there's vanity metrics, there's number of people through the door, there's impressions, which mean nothing. And there's these things that really mean nothing. What matters is the balance, is the echo, what people are saying when they leave. And what, if you're successful and we're talking mainly right now about a VIP event or an upscale event, when you're successful, like the 69 Mets, when 2 million people say they were at the game and they won, and the stadium holds 40,000. When you do an event for 1,000 people and 5,000 people claim they were there, that's hard to measure. But the things you do measure is, there's, again, the blocking and tackling. Were you on time? Did it look good? There was a stage, the sound, all this stuff, which a lot of people can do. That's why I focus on the behavior. And I'll give you a problem we solved, and it was one I just mentioned, right? Too many people at the door all at once. Another problem they have is they don't know who actually came, and until the antiquated guest list kind of routine. So we took an airline approach. We took all these kiosks and put them outside and did check-ins, but that worked really fast to get people in. But here was the next level in solving the problem. We figured out how to send them a text when I showed up, who I showed up with. They knew I was in the room. If they wanted to, they could circulate around and say, "Oh my God, Lee, I'm so glad you made it." Right? They also got that list. So the next morning they could follow up and send you an email and say, "Hope you loved the show. Here's a couple of shots from last night for you." So we gave them extra touch. We would not only solve the problem, but in solving the problem, we said, all right, what else could we do to make, what can we add to that problem?
Value. Yeah. Have that memory be extended. And
you're always looking to do that. And those are the things, sometimes it's really hard. You'll have that recap meeting where you have those things that go on. But before an event, what I like to say to somebody who's in charge is, what do you want people to say? How do you want them to feel? 30 days from now, what do you want? And what do you want your boss to say to you? Because I really care that you get promoted. I want to know if they can tell me those things, like what's keeping them up at night isn't the band being on time. It's something else.
No.
So,
well, and I think that's such a key differentiator of the way you're thinking about this, is that you're really getting to the heart of what your customers' needs are versus just, putting the event on and have it be successful. I mean, that should just be like, yes, that's tick that box. What actually are you needing to get out of this? Because people sometimes don't always come with exactly what their true problems are. So I love those 3-4 things that you just called out. That's amazing.
Yeah, you have to ask the questions that aren't on paper. Most briefs don't include the stuff that I want to know. So I have to have a conversation with them and say, what's been going on? What else is happening? How do we help you beyond what you see in here? Because I'm sure there's stuff that isn't in between the lines that you have to sense and feel and solve for. Like, so, if I was to compare it to a user journey, all right, sometimes I find that engineers and technology people are too impressed with the technology and not the consumer path. They might have they might have a consumer path they talk about, but it's not about making sure it's great.
Yes. No, and I think one of the things that I always find when I talk to people as well is like you've set up your path, and then people tend to just forget about the path, and they forget to go, and I always tell them, like, every month you should have a couple people in your company put their customer hat on and go buy things on your website, go buy things at our physical store, go be the customer, because I swear every month your journey is changing and your customers' needs and wants are changing. And if you just think your static website or approach that you have for how you are acquiring and retaining customers, it evolves and ebbs and flows, and you have to be on top of that all the time.
Yeah. And you have to. So back to how let's say they've given me a challenge and now I want them to buy into what I want to do. I like pencil sketches and stories. I like to say, okay, just go with me for a minute. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm the media buyer. I just got an email and an invite, and it says this. And it says something that's curious to me, and I don't know what that means, but I want to know what that means. So I'm calling a couple friends to go, what does that mean? Special something, something, something. So now you've created excitement. As I take them to, they're showing up at the venue and this is going on, and they're walking in and they're bursting with what is going to happen. They've teased me what's coming. And you're walking through this from an emotional state. By the time you get to show them the pictures, they're there.
Yeah.
Because the way the stage is going to look and the decor all matters. But what really matters is delivering. Delivering the memory. And I heard something the other day. Tell me what you think of this. I found it curious and weird that a lot of companies, the way org charts work, tech companies will have the problems that arise, user problems or complaints or whatever they are, go into IT. And they don't go to the marketing department. They don't go to the people who are responsible for the journey. They go to the technology people.
Yeah, or they sit in support at the end of the journey, and it's that team's only job is to kind of try to make the customer happy. But yeah, no, mature companies who are doing it well, they will have a robust voice of the customer, employee, product, bring that all together, service it up across the organization, because it takes a team effort, and everyone should be feeling like they're in the role of making the business profitable and healthy. And that means everyone's in sales, marketing, success, support, development, accounting, so I think that's totally true. Is like, if it's just at the end and it's one team's problem, you've got a problem in your organization.
100%. Everybody is the brand, right?
Yeah.
Everybody is, and you don't just solve the problem, you cure the symptom, because if it's symptomatic. I was thinking as reflecting on how do I know, this is one of the things I do at shows. I watch the audience. I can see when we have them and when we're losing them. And I watch my client. I get to a position where I can see them watching the audience. And if they have this prideful thing, I'll tell you, when you won, when people are leaving the venue and they go, I'm so happy we did everything we did. It worked so well. I can't wait. When they're saying we at the end of the show, when people are owning a piece of it, you got it. You know?
No, that's a true win. No, that's amazing. So I guess, John, just to kind of close it off here, what would be like one or two things that you would recommend people who are looking at putting on an event, or an experience that you could coach them on, or ways that they could make sure things like go successfully? What would be your recommendation?
And there's so many variables. That's a big one, but I would, know your audience, really know your audience, know what you're trying to get them to either understand or react or behave to, and make sure you're going to throw an event that's actually going to deliver on bringing them out. Sometimes you're better doing a smaller thing. We have this conversation all the time in the event PR world, and are we going to go deep with people so they have a rich experience? Or are we going to bring a lot of people in? I can only ask you the questions that answer that, but sometimes the deep experience resonates much further and has a bigger reflection than the volume thing. So,
oh gosh, that is such a great point of view that just got me thinking about so many different ways to put that. Do you want to go deep, or do you want to go wide into kind of workflow? So that's amazing. That's an amazing way to kind of end this. So look, John, I'm super thankful for making time and sharing your experience. How can people connect with you if they want to work with you or get more insight or connect with you?
Oh, man. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, John Huffman. I go by the nom de mer of the Production Ringmaster because after years of doing this, I kind of feel like I'm the ringmaster of a three-ring circus, you know?
Yep.
But you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me here and there. Maybe we'll post it in this, and I appreciate that plug, but they'll find me just like they find you. You know, smart people find smart people.
Awesome. All right, John. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for your time. Okay.
appreciate it, man. Have a good day.
You too.